Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining Authentic Conversations with Entrepreneurs. I'm here with Nathan Stack, and Nathan is a B Corp consultant. I should say the B Corp consultant, honestly. He's founder of his new business, Profitable Purpose Consulting. So excited to have you here, Nathan. This is our 10th episode of Authentic Conversations with Entrepreneurs. So you're entrepreneur number 10. And what this whole show is about is having exactly that, an authentic conversation. I think, and as I was telling you, I define authenticity as both the good and the growing. I think way too much in entrepreneurship, we want to just talk about all the success. And then we truly know, though, that it's constant growing. It's an ever growing process of self and the business. So this is about sharing those authentic stories of your journey. And today's topic is taking the leap, which is, I think, very relatable. Not just in the beginning of entrepreneurship, which is, I think, where you are at officially now, Nathan, which you'll talk more about. But I think that the misperception is that you only leap once. You think you start the business, but you've got to leap again and again. So, and the only other thing I'll say is, I was telling you, it was such a coincidence. I start each morning with, the Calm app and a meditation, just a quiet start. And the topic today was the time is now. And it had this quote that I want you to bounce off of, if you will. It says, if you wait until everything in your life is perfect before you begin something challenging and new, you'll be waiting forever. The best time is now. So introduce yourself, Nathan. Anything else you want to say? And really let us know, what is it that you feel about taking the leap? Where does the passion come and how do you relate to that quote?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
I like to load the first question.
And I feel bad for everybody joining us now because we spent 30 minutes in the green room having one of the best conversations we've ever had.
We should have been recording this.
Now we need to replicate it. So hopefully I don't dud now. No, I love that quote because I mean I'll just share a quick story of like even this leap that I just took of, I started my business last January. My CEO pushed me, or I keep calling him my CEO, my old boss, now my friend, and my former boss. And anyway, I had somebody basically approach me of like, hey, Mr. B Corp, can we pay you to help us with our certification? And I went, so I went to Jeff and he was like, file an LLC and like, see if you can't grow something. And so,
Nice.
I
Supportive boss.
yeah, and I just kind of like side hustled it for a year. And then this year I kind of started to get serious. I invested a lot of the revenue from last year into a website and all this stuff. And I was getting out there. I mean, not that I wasn't networking before, but I was real busy networking and the website was live and, and I had all these little seeds that I planted along the way. And kind of the goal was like, maybe by the end of this year, I'll be ready. And I sat down with literally on a day where I had no intention on quitting when I woke up that day. And I got my first email was that I, at age 39, did not make UGA's 40 under 40 list. Apparently, I did not meet the necessary amount of UGA memorabilia in my Zoom background, which it's cut off right now. You can't even see it. It goes.
Yeah.
And
you're like a walking UGA brand.
So I threw on a Braves hat today to mix it up. But yeah, I got that. And that was, it took me a second to realize like, oh, this is just an ego hit. Like, get over it. Like, who cares? And I know what I'm doing and I'm proud of it. So that's all that matters. And then I had to drive into the office that day and I stopped on the way at Publix. I got a sub because Katherine and I are both Floridians at heart. And everybody knows that
From my hometown.
Publix is a sub shop that sells groceries.
Where shopping is a pleasure.
Yes. and I'm eating a sub in the car and I feel this crunch and I'm like, I never thought that I'd think, oh, please be like bone in the meat. No, it was but like part of a crown that had chipped off. So I'm like, there's a bunch of dental work I have to pay. So like that's number 2. And then I'm pulling into the parking lot at work and we had this big like wine tasting event the next night. And 9 of the 15 bottles were delivered that day. And the UPS driver came in and told our executive admin that they all broke. And I was just like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is the universe just
comes in threes, right?
Yeah, and I sat
Yeah.
down with my and I had an intern, and she had her presentation, and after everybody left the room, Jeff kind of was like, "Hey, you got a minute?" And I stuck around. We were just talking. I was like, "What are we doing here?" I was like, "Do you think I'm ready?" He's like, "You're never going to be ready, but you're ready." And it was kind of that
Wow.
same premise of like, and
You
he's been
had a
very
boss that
supportive.
was telling you to leave?
Yeah. So, and I think he got it though, that like he believed in me enough that I could do this, and I don't think he's right. I know he's right that as long as it was a side hustle, it was never when all of a sudden you have to feed yourself. And then
Right.
once I got the tooth fixed, of course. Now that once you have to feed yourself, it was, the urgency at which like all of a sudden like top of funnel becomes very important, and all of a sudden like just kind of some leads in a Google sheet become like boom, this one's at 80% and this one's at 40%, and here's the follow up items, and it became very targeted. And I was shocked at how quickly I was able to start selling and getting projects booked and revenue booked, and how quickly it took off. But yeah,
Well,
that
that
was
MBA, I think, was serving you well in that moment.
yeah, and I think, I mean, yeah, it was just everything. I mean, there's the old adage too that like, good fortune's when hard work meets, or when opportunity meets preparation.
Hmm.
And I had been preparing for this. I didn't know I was preparing for it, but I had been for 4 or 5 years. And all the work I
Hmm.
was doing in the B Corp space. And then I think the opportunity was there, and I already had some people kind of like, hey, and so I was able to close those deals and have a little revenue already booked when I jumped. And so yeah, no, that quote, yeah, there's not a good time. Apparently it's when you chip a crown off and a bunch of line breaks, and UGA
So what
tells
you're
you
saying
to.
is read the signs.
So, and maybe next year, maybe I'll be 41 under 41. I don't know. I don't think they give that, but we'll try.
Yeah. Yeah, Day seem I'm curious though, like, so if your boss at the time had said, well, I don't know, it just seems like a, shitty day, like some bottles broken, what you trying to make of it? Like, if he hadn't encouraged you, do you think you would have still left? Leaped? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was coming. I'd been there 5 or 6 years, and at some point too, it's like when you're not when your title is stagnant, it's like how long can you stay at the same company before it starts to hinder your career? Before that doesn't look good on your resume that you made director,
Right,
and then you've been in the same director role for forever.
right.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know that it would have happened that day, but I think it would have happened. It would
You
have
felt
happened.
it stirring.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's the timing. Everything was just right. Everything just yeah. I mean, and again, it was like there was an opportunity of timing, of everything, of growth of the B Corp movement, of just that it all just kind of aligns. Yeah, it might not have been that day,
yeah.
but it was coming.
I love it. Can we pause 1 minute? Because I think that because you're so involved with B Corp, there's an assumption that most people know what the heck that is. So this is your moment. Please share what a B corporation is.
So B corporations are for-profit businesses that are certified by an outside nonprofit body, B Lab, and using their business as a force for good. So kind of like LEED is to a building or certified organic is to milk, B Corps are to the entire business. So looking at your corporate governance, transparency, your
Mhm.
workers and benefits and pay and supplementary benefits, your community impact, your from everything from supply chain diversity to employee diversity to pro bono charitable work, etc., to your environmental footprint,
Mhm.
and also your customers and how you take care of your customers. Even things like, are you collecting data on your website, and are you transparent about what you're using the data for, those types of
Yeah.
things. And then above and beyond that, you get points for like, if any for-profit business can certify. So there's companies like the one I worked for was just a regular consulting company, IT consulting, but there's
Mhm.
also social impact businesses. So
Mhm.
depending on what your business is in the line, or which line your business is in, um, you can get points for going above and beyond to solve some sort of need for underserved populations or people below
Mhm.
the poverty line and things like that. So there's some really cool for-profit social enterprises that are out there that people would go, oh, so you're a nonprofit? Like, no, they're
Yeah.
for-profit.
Yeah.
So it's a very cool movement. I mean,
Yeah.
Patagonia, Warby Parker, Tom Shoes, Toms of
Yeah.
Maine,
Those are the ones I think a lot of people know about. But
Bombas
where can
socks.
people go to? There's a website where you can look up B corporations, right?
Yeah, I think it's bcorporation.net/directory. But if you Google B Corp directory, I
Yeah.
will say it's a nonprofit. So scroll down past the ad, the paid click one.
Yeah.
Save
The
them some money.
well, I want to say, try to shop that for the holidays. Try to support B corporations because I think that's how I think
Oh,
all business should be, honestly.
uncommon
So,
good, uncommon goods. I highly recommend Uncommon Goods for gifts. Like
yeah,
it's certified B Corp, and they have
really
uncommon
cool
stuff.
gift.
So it's just
Yeah.
really cool, handmade. They a lot of makers sell their stuff there.
Yeah.
Really cool products.
I love their catalog. So, is your business a B Corp, or what are the steps
You
to get into it?
you
I don't
know
think
it.
it's all that you describe. It takes a process, right?
Yeah,
So,
you have to be in business for a year, working at least 35 hours a week on the business, which for anybody doing the math means that for the first year I was basically working 2 full-time jobs.
right.
Um, so I like my work. So I didn't really care. It's not really work
Yeah.
if you enjoy what you're doing. But yeah, so as soon as I hit my 1 year anniversary, I submitted my assessment and then got through the verification, the evaluation queue, the
Wow.
verification queue, the audit call, and I've been certified since May, I believe.
Oh, wow.
So
Congrats. Of course you
yeah,
are. You're like
I
Mr. B
figured it
Corp.
was a bad look to
Oh,
be a
that's
B
the
Corp
title,
consultant.
Mr.
Yeah,
B Corp.
bad look. Yeah, you can't be Mr. B Corp and then own a company that's not a B Corp, or do B Corp consulting and
Exactly.
not be a
Exactly.
B Corp.
So, okay, take me back. I Let's get back to the leaping here because I don't think this is your first leap. I think we had 30 minutes before where I really want you to talk about. I think you're part human, part frog. So go ahead and fill us in on.
You know, and it's funny, until this little conversation before this, like I don't think I even noticed. I
Huh.
think that I would have said this is the first leap I've taken, but like, yeah, and I'll
Well,
date myself.
that's the beauty of having a truly authentic conversation. It's like you hear something for the first time within yourself. So thank
Yeah,
you. I'm
and I
glad
mean,
that
and
could
it's
unlock that for you.
I was gonna say, like, I don't want to share what year it was because I'll date myself, but I already told people I was 39. So 2006, I quit a job. I got a job in Athens after I graduated, and
In Georgia,
yeah,
yeah.
one day I just decided like I was done, and I forget what happened. Some spoiled like Wendy's chicken nuggets or something. Anyway, um,
It's all related to food.
it was trucking. I worked in trucking. Somebody forgot to check a trailer and a bunch of chicken spoiled over the weekend. And so I was like, you know what, I'm done. So I'd been playing a lot of poker and I just decided that that was it. And I was going to move to Las Vegas and try to be a professional poker. It was like the heyday of, like all the World Series of Poker was on like prime time. And
Yeah.
some average Joe had just won Chris Moneymaker. And like his last
Wow.
name literally was Moneymaker. And so I moved to Vegas. So like I literally packed up a U-Haul, like booked an apartment sight unseen because I had some other friends who moved out there to play poker who also
Hmm.
lived in that apartment complex. I reffed hockey and played poker and
Wow.
until I decided that maybe I should get a real job, and I did that. But even I went to Enterprise. I rented cars for 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, and it's funny how many people I tell that story to. Like, I worked for Enterprise. Um,
Really?
Oh yeah, and honestly, it's
Okay.
funny how much I owe to that company. Of like when I think about how much they trained me on like KPIs and managing the numbers and things like
I thought you
that.
meant like you literally owe money. I was like, shh, shh.
Oh no, how much I owe? No, I don't. I'm not on their.
Oh,
I'm not on the do
yes.
not rent list. Don't
I don't know
worry.
why I took it there. You were
No,
going with like money and gambling.
living in Vegas, I owe them so much money. No,
Yeah.
I owe them so much for my career. But even
There we go.
there, like 2 years in, I took a leap with a really promising rental career. Like you'd be the next big branch manager. And I was like, what's this outside sales role? That looks pretty cool. I've always wanted to try sales. So I did outside sales for 3 years. Can't say I'm great at it. And then I'd say those leaps just kind of kept happening. And, I quit a job, a horrible job when I knew I just had to quit. I couldn't go back with no plan in place.
Hmm.
So I mean, then now we're fast forward to like 2014, 2015. And, so then it was like, I had to figure it out. So I drove an Uber because I kind of quit that job and was like, I'll go back to grad school, but it was already summer. So I've missed deadlines. So I drove an
Yeah.
Uber, I bartended. I did a bunch of stuff I never thought I would do or really ever. Just kind of in your mid 30s. Like, I mean, I thought I would bartend in college. I didn't think I'd be starting my bartending gig at the convention center at age 32. So, I did all that. I got into grad school, and then even finishing grad school, I worked on that B Corp project for my old company. And I don't know. I was like, what made me want to go work for? I mean, now it all makes sense that I went to work for the same boss I was just telling a story about. But I went to work for some company that had like, I was like employee like 18 or 19 when I started, and
Yeah.
all my MBA buddies are going to like Georgia Pacific and Delta and UPS, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to work for this startup consulting shop. And so, yeah, I mean, and it just kept happening. I mean, I don't know. I guess, going back to the quote you shared, it's like, why did I start? Why did I take that job? Why did I start Be Local Georgia 2018 to start like my own nonprofit? Why did
Yeah.
I decide that I should write a book and release it? Like, and so like, again, that
Yeah.
conversation we had before this, like, I guess I didn't realize that, yeah, maybe I am part frog, that I think if you've put in the work and you've put in the work, and you feel prepared, maybe it's less scary, but I don't think that that's even true. If I'm being,
Yeah.
if I'm being 100% candid, it's all terrifying. And any entrepreneur will tell you
Even though you were doing a lot of leaping, it's always been terrifying.
yeah, I mean, I quit a job with no idea of anything lined up, no job, no real plan other than grad school.
How do you
Um,
do it anyway? How do you push through the terrifying?
I think you just have to believe in yourself, bet on yourself. If I'm using the little poker analogy,
Yeah.
like you have to be willing to bet on yourself. And again, to stick with the poker analogies, I don't think you need to shove, which is poker speak for push all your chips in the middle of the table and go all in, which everybody loves to
Yeah.
do.
Thank you for defining that. I was like,
Those are my favorite home games to play in with a bunch of people like that. But I think you can sometimes you can just call a bet and see what happens. You don't have to like, you don't always have, it doesn't always have to be like a binary all or nothing, but I think you can take leaps, um,
yeah.
and conservative leaps. And I think the older you get, you start to trust your gut and the situation that you're in, and you kind of, and how hard you've worked, and how prepared you are for what's going to happen. And you understand kind of the risk versus reward too, of like, even quitting my job, what is the worst thing that was going to happen to me? Failure and an ego blow. Honestly, the worst thing was that I would have to find another job and admit that my baby, my idea, my new business didn't work. That's still a possibility, but at the end of the day, I think at some point I had that epiphany very early on. I was like, what's the worst thing that could happen right now?
Mhm.
And it,
Mhm.
it isn't that bad. So, but the best thing, honestly, the worst thing that could ever happen was I never take the leap. And then I live the rest of my life talking about this idea I had. And I used to have this consulting business on the side. It kind of fizzled eventually. Like, that's the worst thing
Amen.
that could have
Yeah.
happened, was to never know if I have the potential that I believe I have. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
leap. But
That's why I say it's like this spark inside of you. It's like this burning. It's not going to go away. But it's up to you to decide when you ignite it.
yeah, and
So
all the little things you've always wanted to do at work, where you're like, man, if I was the boss, I'd run things this way. And then it's kind of like, well, then go start your own company. And you're like, fine, I will.
yeah. Yeah.
So now you get to
That's
build
why.
whatever you want to build.
But you'd be surprised how many entrepreneurs don't ask themselves that question. And it's something that I thought of like at the end of my first month in business. Is I say you have to ask yourself, what kind of boss do I want to be to myself? Because you think whatever situation you're in, you think is all about that situation, but you take yourself with you, and sometimes it goes both ways. So I realized, we talked about this, that I, am super hardworking, and I was stressing myself the hell out, and I was like, I'm my own worst boss. Like, so yeah, that's when I, really started talking about, pacing, and the R and fire in my brand is rhythm, like finding your pacing, setting your rhythm in your business. Cause, you get in the motions with, I think we've talked about this already too. Like you're figuring out your rhythm in your business. Cause maybe this is the first time you're like having to stick, right? Like stick a while.
And
And
knowing what
you don't want to leap away from this. This is your baby, like you said.
yeah, and knowing what works for you too. Like, there was a night the
Yeah.
other night where I was working on a deliverable for a client, and it involved basically making a lot of slide decks, training slide decks, because I do some culture work as well. And it was kind of like, hey, let's
Yeah.
implement this, but let's implement it in a way that enhances the culture. How often we're going to review this anyway? So I'm making these decks, and I have like 3 decks left out of like the 8 I was making. And I find myself at like, man, I'm in the zone at like midnight. but earlier that day I was just not feeling anything. So I was like doing laundry and vacuumed. I'm like, when you find yourself like doing stuff like, I don't know, I'm like vacuuming the blinds. And so like I
Super
worked
clean.
I worked till 4 in the morning, and because I found my and same thing with like working on the
Yeah.
book. It was like I've discovered that I do like the late night work. I'm better. I don't know why. I focus, I zone in.
Yeah.
There's less alerts.
Which doesn't work in a traditional business.
Mm-mm.
So yeah, yeah.
But even
Tell us
thinking
more
about
about the
like,
book, Nathan. Tell us more about the
oh,
book.
tell you about the book. The book is
Yeah.
a longer version of a lot of the
That's another
story I
leap,
just
right?
shared. So, but no, the whole premise of the book, when I took the leap into outside sales at Enterprise, I had a boss who gave me a CD set. At least it wasn't a cassette set of Jim
Not floppy
Rohn.
disk.
Yeah, oh God, it was the motivational speaker Jim Rohn. It was his The Art of Exceptional Living. And anybody who knows Jim Rohn knows he has a really unique voice. And anyway, I love it. I ate it up. I'd never been introduced to personal development before. And he has a quote that he always says, which is learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job.
Mhm.
And I was sitting on I've been thinking about this book. I've been trying to write it. I got a cabin up in North Georgia and sat there and wrote like 7 pages and then just moved a table of contents around a bunch of times. And then I was sitting on a tarmac waiting to go on a vacation, and I hadn't taken my computer. I started thinking about that quote and reflecting on like how hard I had worked to get to this point. And I just started kind of writing, and out of that just came this whole story of like, again, much like this conversation where I didn't realize it until I started kind of putting my thoughts down, that like I have always worked really hard on myself. Like, not just
Mhm.
because I think we lose that in the whole like work-life balance conversation. And like, I hate to tell you, like, nobody who's, made it and I think who lives that life that they've always dreamed of outside of maybe like an influencer or like a YouTuber, like most
Right.
of us have put in like really, really long hours developing skills and
Yeah.
networks and going trudging through those jobs that we didn't necessarily find any purpose or meaning in, but taking things out of them. And I
Right.
just thought that was worth telling the story of like, you kind of have to take ownership of your own career and what you want it to look like, because
Mhm. Mhm.
nobody else is going to. So if you're, going to spend your early career going like, well, it's 4:59, I am done and that is it, and I don't read books, I don't go to networking events, they don't pay me to do that, then like, don't be surprised when you wake up and you're my age now and you're going like, that job looks
Right.
really, you're scrolling through the jobs and like, that job sounds great. And you're like, I have none of those skills, especially
Right.
nowadays, like everything's
You're not going to grow
online.
them all under that one roof. Yeah,
Yeah, and
for
you can
sure.
look at a job posting now and be like, man, I really, in my world, everybody's like, I want to work in sustainability. Well, what does that mean? Like, sustainability is so broad. So like,
Right.
let's define what it is. But then when you find, okay, no, I really want to work in like ESG consult. Okay. Environmental. Okay, great. What do those job postings say? What skills do you need? What qualifications are they requiring?
Get
Like,
this.
go
Get
get them.
specific. Right. Yeah.
2022, it's online. There's Khan Academy and Udemy and like
Yeah.
there's nonprofits you can volunteer at and build skills. There's just so many ways that there's really no excuse. And I just don't, I think that's something that I think gets missed a lot of the times, because I think most people, I always joke, unless you're a finance or accounting major, you don't know what you're going to do after college. You just kind of go and like, oh, I don't know, I'm going to get a degree because people told me to. And I think that
Yeah.
it's important to know that like, A, you don't have to love that first job, and B, start to just be constantly kind of always working on that. Like, what's my 5-year plan? Where do I want to be? And be okay to pivot too when you realize that like, maybe I thought I wanted to do
Yeah.
PR or
Not just
whatever.
when a pandemic prompts you to pivot. Right.
Yeah, and be willing to say like, okay, this plan was good and I'm working towards it. And what are what are the skills I have? How do they transfer to where I want to pivot? And what is it that I
Yeah.
find meaning in? But I think that also requires a lot of little leaps and little failures and little trials and things to
I
kind
love
of
it.
figure out what you love and what you don't.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the book called?
It's called Happy Monday, Designing Your Dream Career.
Love it, love it. And who is it for? Because I can hear a lot of different. I know you do some work at UGA, University of Georgia, and working with students. I hear some with like early career, but who can benefit from reading it?
I think students, all the way up through, I would think, I wouldn't even say young professionals, like up, I would say mid-30s, late 30s. I mean, I think really just anybody looking to pivot, if I'm being honest. I never think it's too late to kind of wake up at early 40s, mid 40s and go like, what am I doing here? What did I
Mm-hmm.
always want to do? How do I get there? I mean, I knew I was onto something because this started as like what I wrote on the airplane. I paid a buddy of mine that has like a film production company. I paid him like $1,000 to come record me. I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I probably didn't need to be spending $1,000. I was like, let's do this. I've never done anything with the video, but his son helped him. His 15-year-old son helped him with all the camera set up, and we made it look like I was in like giving a TED talk. I was in an empty room. It's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, I was like, I literally got off and I went, was that any good? And his first response was, I'm so glad my son was here to hear that because that was
Oh,
very valuable. I was like,
was it you
oh,
read in your book?
no, I hadn't even written the book yet. This was
What
just
were you?
me. I just kind of, it was a speech that I kind of wrote to kind of like, maybe this
Oh,
is a TED talk. And that's the book came out of that was as I was like my fleshed out thoughts of like, huh.
you have to like share this, right? Like behind the scenes.
I mean,
I'm so
it's
curious.
on YouTube somewhere.
Oh my God.
So, but
I
yeah,
love
well,
it.
I don't like it because like you can hear me like breathing. I need to
The
re-record
authentic
it.
you, Nathan.
Yes. But I think, I mean, it comes back to, and we talked about this before the show, some of the like imposter syndrome and things that just never go away of like, was that any good? Or the night I released the book where I didn't sleep because I'm like, you're stupid. Nobody wants to read your story. And then people start reading it and they're like, dude, loved your book. And you're like, oh, my book? So I think,
Yeah.
I don't know, coming to grips with that as an entrepreneur has been fun as well, of like acknowledging when that's creeping in and just kind of like letting the, like riding the wave of the imposter syndrome, knowing that
Yeah.
this too shall
It's part of the
pass.
journey. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting. Well, I want to show people where to go for your business website so that 'cause I know they're curious to learn more about you and check you out.
I picked a
But
really easy short domain name. I know.
it's memorable and I love the alliteration of it. So that makes it more memorable. No, I was going to say, so my daughter is 5.5, and I think there's something with the 5 and 6, between 5 and 8, like obsession with Floor is Lava, and she's found the TV show. So I think, inevitably there's just varying comfort levels, just like it is with investing. Are you conservative or are you more easy breezy with it, right? Um, and so for the people who, and I would say the people, can avoid alliteration, who, fear the fall or the fail or the floundering, or I think even more so, those people who are sitting on that wall like a Humpty Dumpty.
Oh, need me to push them over?
Well, I think it's whether you think the floor is lava or you think, oh, I can't take the leap because I might fall and crack open like Humpty Dumpty, right? What if I embarrass myself? For the early entrepreneur, taking that initial leap, or deciding, I can change my business or I can do this, write a book. For the people that aren't as used to the leaps, what advice would you give them?
I mean, maybe take a baby leap, but I think I mean, there's the old like embrace failure. Like if you're not failing, you haven't really tried anything. If you've never failed, or you're some sort of like genius person that's awesome. But I think, I think that's where you think about where like the wisdom comes from. And I try to get that through in the book is like the wisdom is coming from the fact that like I learned all these things failing. I learned them getting laid off twice in a year or
Yeah.
realizing that I'm an adequate salesman. Oh, that's it. Like there's just so many things of like, even the things I was good at, I discovered I was miserable. And so like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think putting yourself out there is just like I wrote down a line to myself the other like a year and a half ago. I had an email and I'd snooze it and it pop up every Saturday. I literally said do something every day that makes yourself uncomfortable.
Mm,
And I've been trying to, and so I think a lot of like I don't think I appreciate how much the stretching and the uncomfortability have helped me grow as a person.
yeah.
Starting to even like I remember like the baby leap of like being on my first podcast, and now I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah,
All over.
I'll see if I can fit you
I'm so
in.
honored to have you, Nathan.
Yeah,
You've been
but
all
like,
around the globe on podcasts.
yeah, but like, oh, I know it keeps going too. South Africa
Yeah.
next month, but yeah, I think that's been like I started to kind of. I think the more leaping you do, the more you learn to trust your gut and read the situation the correct way. And it's kind of like football or whatever sport you're into. Like quarterback comes up to the line and he's seen this defensive formation and he knows that linebacker's blitzing, and you know what I mean? But like the first time you're going to get hit in the teeth. But like after you get hit in the teeth enough times, like, like, okay, he's coming, check down, throw to that guy over there. Like,
yeah.
So I think that's the beauty of it, is the more you do it, the more you fail, the better you're going to get. And again, getting over your ego, that like that worst thing that could happen is that you fail. Who cares?
Yeah.
And honestly, the older you get and the more
be unafraid to fail.
If you have a friend that makes fun of you or somebody in your network that's like, knew you were going to fail, cut them out of your network and just move on. Like, only supportive people.
Nobody needs that.
Even my dad, when I quit, my parents swore up and down, like, oh, Nathan got laid off. And I was like, no, I quit. And they're like, and my dad sent me something about when he tried to start a business and about how quickly he ran out of money. And I just sent him back. I said, Dad, that's great, but I don't want to hear any more of that. Positive vibes only. And I hit send, and I've never heard it again. But I'm like, I need support. I don't need negative Nancy. I don't need the sky's falling. I already know how to gauge risk.
Yeah.
Just support. That's all I want, and that's all I need. And anybody who isn't offering that, I don't really have time for you. Oh,
right. Okay. Yeah. That I'm glad you've already figured that out as an entrepreneur, for sure. It's about having support and minimizing any of the naysayers, for sure. Yeah. So I know, you are wild and active on LinkedIn. So I want people to find you there, since we are on LinkedIn.
The only social
and you have a special offer for people, right?
Yeah. If anybody wants to read the ebook,
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, designing your dream career. I can't believe I don't have the copy right here. Anyway, if you will go on LinkedIn and follow my company page, Profitable Purpose Consulting, and then just send me a message and tells me I followed it, and give me your email. And I don't have a newsletter, so you don't have to worry about me spamming you. I legit just need your email that's associated with your Kindle account, so that I can send you a copy of the book.
A free copy of the
e-reader. Yeah, free copy. So follow me.
When do they have to do this by?
I would love it by the end of the day tomorrow, because I'm supposed to raise the price, and then my free promo just got a lot more expensive.
Okay, so you have 24 hours. And yes. And I'll say I read the foreword of the book. That's as far as I've gotten, and it felt like a conversation with you, Nathan. It just felt like and I loved it for that. Yeah. And we've known each other like year and a half, now? 2 years now.
Like longer than that. It was like
I
know. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Our good friend Lisa, Lisa Michaels connected us. She was on here last month, so I was like, I'm talking to Nathan. But every conversation has just been so natural and so wonderful. I think if you can, I don't care if you're a young professional, you got to read Nathan's book. He's just a superstar.
Yes. So. Please leave a review on Amazon.
Yeah, and I'll have the replay here on LinkedIn. Also, it'll be on my website next week. And speaking of imposter syndrome, we're going to be talking about in our next episode on November 17th at 1:30 Eastern. We're going to be talking to Pam Ballantyne about You Are Enough and her own journey with imposter syndrome. I think that's, I see you shaking your head. I think that's a message that every entrepreneur has had to remind themselves of every now and again, maybe daily on some days. Yeah.
Yep. It's real.
So thank you so much for doing this, Nathan, for being here, for being the authentic you and nothing else, just enough. And
baseball cap and all, is my pleasure.
Yeah, all you, 100%, and just very rich in every conversation. Thank you. Thanks, and I look forward to continuing to follow your journey in your business. So congrats.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.